therapist Kristen Jacobson.
Hey everyone, I'm Kristen, the anxiety therapist, and in the last two parts of this series, I explored what imposter syndrome is and where it comes from. So I talked a little bit about how family of origin and social comparisons and perfectionism can really fuel these feelings of self-doubt. And I examined how these roots shape the belief that we're not good enough. So now that you have sort of a solid understanding of the problem, it's time to focus on the solution. So this final part will give you some practical tools and mindset shifts to really help you overcome imposter syndrome and take back that confidence. So let's dive into the tools, exercises, and behavioral changes that can really help you to stop feeling like a fraud and start owning your success. So the first is called cognitive reframing, and this is really just a fancy way of saying challenging your imposter thoughts. So one of the most effective ways to combat imposter syndrome is by changing how you think about yourself. Cognitive reframing is a technique from cognitive behavioral therapy. I do this a lot with my clients. It's an evidence-based strategy or treatment approach. And it's meant to shift negative or distorted thinking patterns. So the idea is to challenge your imposter thoughts and replace them with more realistic and balanced ones. So when you find yourself thinking, I don't deserve to be here, or I'm not as good as people think I am, you want to pause and ask yourself, what's the evidence for and against this thought? So, for example, if you believe you only got a promotion because of luck, then you want to look at the facts. What hard work or skills contributed to this promotion? Did other people recognize your efforts? The goal is to really ground yourself in reality and evidence and not just feelings. So one exercise is that, next time an imposter thought pops up, you can write it down and then list the facts that prove why that thought isn't true. And then over time, this process will really help to retrain your brain to see things more clearly and more positively. This is called neuroplasticity, where we can actually rewire our brain over time through consistency and repetition. Next is self-compassion. So we want to be kind to ourselves. We're often our own worst critics, especially when we're feeling inadequate, which is, the hallmark of imposter syndrome. And so self-compassion is about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would maybe offer a friend in a similar situation. So instead of beating yourself up for not being perfect, you want to practice accepting your mistakes and imperfections as part of just being human. Dr. Kristen Neff has done a lot of research on self-compassion, and she identifies three components to this. The first is self-kindness versus self-judgment. So this is speaking to yourself kindly rather than harshly. The next is common humanity versus isolation. And this entails realizing that everyone makes mistakes and you're not alone. And then finally is mindfulness versus over-identification. So we want to be aware of our feelings without letting them take over. So here's an exercise for you. The next time you catch yourself being self-critical, pause and ask yourself, what would I say to a friend in this situation? Then try speaking to yourself in the same way. And this simple shift can really help ease the pressure that you put on yourself and build resilience. Number 3 is grounding in facts and keeping a wins journal. So when imposter syndrome hits, it's really easy to focus on what you think you're doing wrong and overlook your successes. To counter this, we want to start keeping a wins journal where you record your accomplishments, whether they're big or small, doesn't matter. Writing down these achievements helps you create a tangible, physical record of evidence that you're capable and deserving. So over time, this journal becomes a really powerful reminder of what you've achieved, making it harder for those imposter feelings to take root. So for me personally, this looked like keeping a folder on my computer with all of the positive feedback that I received from my students at the end of each term after they completed their class evaluations. So if I ever doubted my teaching skills or knowledge base, or I was feeling, insecure about teaching a new class that I had never taught before, I would go back and read through their comments for a little confidence booster. So an exercise that you can try is each day or week, write down at least one win in your journal. It can be something as simple as receiving positive feedback, or solving a problem at work, or completing a task that you've been avoiding. We all have those, right? The key is to remind yourself of your successes, even when your mind is fixated on your shortcomings or perceived shortcomings. So there are also some behavioral shifts to help overcome imposter syndrome. The first is to adopt a growth mindset. So people with imposter syndrome often have what we call a fixed mindset. This is the belief that your abilities or skills are sort of set in stone. And when you have a fixed mindset, then failure feels like proof that you're not good enough. In contrast, a growth mindset is the belief that your skills and intelligence can develop over time with effort, right? So you're learning new things, you're constantly growing. And this is all based on the research of Carol Dweck. I would really recommend looking up her book if you're interested. So with a growth mindset, failure isn't something to fear, it's really just an opportunity to learn. And shifting to this mindset really helps you embrace challenges and see mistakes as part of the learning process, not as evidence of your inadequacy. With anything new where we're stepping outside of our comfort zones, there's going to be a learning curve where learning new information or a new skill or new technology, whatever it is. So we're inevitably going to make mistakes, and that's not failure. It just means that we're growing, we're learning. An example is, instead of thinking I'm not cut out for this job, you can reframe it as there's a learning curve with everything and I will improve my skills over time. So by focusing on growth rather than perfection, you can really reduce the pressure to always perform at 100%. Next, you want to find mentorship and community. So one of the most damaging aspects of imposter syndrome is the sense of isolation that it creates. So a lot of people feel like they're the only one struggling, but the truth is that many people, especially high achievers, feel the same way. As I mentioned in my other video, about 70 to 75% of the population has experienced imposter syndrome at some point. So seeking out mentors and building a supportive community can really help you break that cycle of self-doubt. A mentor can offer guidance, perspective, reassurance, all of those things when you're feeling uncertain. And similarly, being part of a community where you can openly discuss your challenges without judgment really helps to normalize those feelings and make you realize you're not alone. I'm in a Voxer chat. I don't know if you're familiar with Voxer, but it's essentially like a group chat where it's voice recordings instead of text messages. So I'm in this Voxer chat with 3 other therapists, and it's just so nice to have a space where we can talk about work and personal lives, and it's a completely judgment-free zone, and we're there to just kind of like be each other's cheerleaders and boost each other up, and I just talked the other day about some shame I was experiencing about my newsletter and my email list. So it's just nice to have the support of other people. One action step that you can take is, if you don't already have a mentor, you can reach out to someone that you respect, who maybe you've learned a lot from them, and maybe ask if they'd be willing to offer you advice or support. And there are plenty of professional groups or networks where other people share their experiences and insights. And so sometimes just talking to somebody who's been there can make all the difference. I know one of my clients is an attorney and this was a year or two ago, took a continuing education course on imposter syndrome, and they had no idea it affected so many people, and just found a lot of comfort in knowing that information, because they really felt like it was something they struggled with alone, and it was very isolating. And then finally, seek out professional support when needed. So these tools and exercises are really helpful. And again, you have to be consistent with them. These are not like one-off things you're going to do and it's magically going to solve your problems. But sometimes this imposter syndrome can be more like insidious and deeply ingrained. And so these self-help strategies alone might not be enough. You might actually need some therapy or coaching in order to work through some of those more persistent imposter feelings. So if you feel like imposter syndrome is severely affecting your mental health or your career, definitely don't hesitate to seek help from a professional who can guide you through it in a more structured way. So, bottom line is overcoming imposter syndrome takes time and effort, but it is absolutely possible with the right tools, mindset shifts, and support. And remember, imposter syndrome thrives on isolation and self-doubt. So the more you engage with your accomplishments and share your experiences with others, the less power it has. You've worked really hard to get where you are. So now it's time to just own it and relish in that. I hope this video has been helpful. I'd love to hear about your own experiences with imposter syndrome and anything that you have found helpful in order to kind of shift your mindset or overcome those imposter syndromes. I hope you all have a great week. I will see you next time.